Focus on emotional abuse, and this is our question of the day. What do you think is the best way for someone in an abusive relationship to protect themselves? K24 TV across all social media, and of course right there on your screen. Please call us and let us know. And I'm joined by the director of the Rose Foundation, that is Esther Kisahu. And as we continue the discussion, this is what some of you are saying on social media, and I just want to pick up a text that came up earlier on. Hi, I really need your help. I think I'm being emotionally abused. I am dating a doctor who takes up 2 weeks without talking to me, then comes back like we are all good sometimes. He doesn't pick up my calls or even reply my messages. What should I do? I love him so much. Okay, before we go to the next message, Esther, this lady says that the partner for 2 whole weeks doesn't talk to her, doesn't answer her calls. This is obviously emotional abuse. Someone would expect that maybe the guy doesn't talk to her politely, but even not talking at all, that is still abuse.
Yes, it is. In fact, let me add that the silent treatment, either in your presence or
absence,
in your absence, is actually emotional abuse. So when someone goes off for 2 weeks without communicating to you, they're sending a message you're not important. And I can see this lady saying she's been emotionally abused and there's violence. And I want to say that when we talk about domestic violence, we're talking about all forms: emotional, physical, economic torture, psychological torture, and verbal aggression. And I also want to say that for this lady, her feelings that she loves him so much, they are valid feelings, because victims still love their abusers. But the problem is the abuser does not love them, because violence is not love. They've already sent the message that my violence means I do not love you. So this is a one-sided relationship where she loves the abuser, but she's not loved in return. So she has to make up her mind. Does she want to be in a relationship where she's loved by another, esteemed highly, protected, with great self-esteem because someone else loves her? All
right, let's take a call from Joshua in Kirinyaga. Joshua, good morning.
Morning, Bubi.
How are you doing, sir?
Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year. Hatujaongea hii mwaka?
Hatujaongea bwana.
Okay, Happy New Year and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, brother. Sasa. Now, number one, there is that lady who has said that she's dating a doctor.
Yes.
You know, Bubi, I think some of us like to pretend to be quote-unquote cows,
Okay.
Because now, if you're calling someone for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and they are not picking calls,
yes,
and you know very well that they do not work in Kisimayu, then definitely either someone is playing around with your emotions,
right,
or like you said, someone has another family. I always believe that the biggest advocates for violence are actually the victims themselves. Because I always believe that the first time is an accident. If someone slaps you the first time or insults you the first time,
yes,
it could probably be an accident. But if they do it the second time,
yes,
sometimes we say it's a coincidence, but the third time, it is an enemy action. And our ladies have a problem with this because they like justifying things. Someone comes and they slap you.
Yes.
Then tomorrow the lady tells you, I think vile alikuwa mlevi, or I understand he told me he was stressed up na alikuwa na hasira. If someone starts showing signs of making violence against you, there is only one solution, run. Don't give them time. Don't give them a platform to perpetuate such violence.
Yes.
So it is you actually the person to stop it. Nobody can make you a slave or a victim if you don't want it to happen on you.
Thank you very much, Joshua.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. And I totally agree with him. We'll talk about the solutions later on. There's another text, Bona Director. I think it was from Bernard. He was asking, between men and women, who is more susceptible to emotional abuse, since you have said women are, the bigger victims of physical abuse? Bernard from Nairobi. So who is more susceptible to emotional abuse? Is it the men or is it the women, or is it a 50-50 situation?
I want to say that by the time physical abuse happens, all other forms of violence have happened.
All right.
Violence begins with humiliation, belittling, intimidation, then it escalates into that stage of physical violence. And we also say that violence happens in a continuum, in that this first incident is tied to the next, is tied to the next, until to the end result. It is a chain.
Okay.
And I want to say that it is a fallacy, it's a myth that there are more women who are physically abused, but there are more men who are emotionally abused. If you look at the statistics, that there are 95% men who are perpetrators of violence, who are abusers.
Right.
Then in that mix of emotional abuse, physical abuse, then if we have already said that by the time physical abuse, all other forms of abuse have happened, then it is women who are still more emotionally abused. And I also want to add, from what I heard from the caller very quickly, that victimization is not a choice. And let me explain how this happens.
Victimization is not a choice.
However, violence on someone is a choice. It is not loss of control. It is a choice shaped by a belief system. Because our thoughts shape our belief system and our values, and our thoughts come out as our actions. So it is a choice. It is a perpetrator who needs to be helped to stop the violence on the victim. Because remember, we said it is an imbalance of power. That is why we have an abuser and a victim. So it is so unfortunate that someone can think that you can choose to be a victim. Victims do not choose to be a victim. And maybe I can say, when we enter in relationship, let me say my example.
All right.
There is that grooming stage where the abuser is loving and kind and paying you attention all the time. Then when that grooming stage ends, then the violence begins. And also it is important to note that in that scenario of coercive power, the victim becomes degraded a little bit, until they're cowered into victimization, until the stage that something happens in their lives that empowers them to come out of that violence. That is why intervention is very, very important. That is why society should be speaking up and acting. The silence actually emboldens the abusers to be more abusers.
Let me just ask you this then, because I sort of understand where Joshua was coming from, saying that the victims are the perpetrators of actually the violence against them. In the sense that you have just told us, as we began the conversation, that you were in a marriage for 9 years that was very abusive. What made you stay after, the first time and the second time and the third time and God knows how many times more? You had the opportunity to leave. I don't know, were you imprisoned? Were you in a cage? Were you locked in a room somewhere that you couldn't get out? What made you stay every minute after every single time you were abused?
Very important question, because now I'm going to address the victims who are watching me right now. Abuse has 4 stages, and the first stage is called language. Language is the first step in dehumanizing a person. So the language could be simple, stupid, or let's say in extreme forms, the verbal abuse is "you're a dog." That's the language, right? Exactly. So that language objectifies you. Second stage. The third stage, once you're objectified, then there is dehumanization, whereby the abuser does not see you as a human. And then the fourth stage is victimization. The reason why victims are caught in this trap is because of a cycle of violence. If you go to our website, www.therosefoundationdvp.org, we have an explanation, very good explanation of a lot of relationship dynamics, especially domestic violence and emotional abuse is there. There's this cycle, it's called the cycle of violence. This is how it begins. It begins with tension buildup. And when the tension builds up, it results in the violence happening. And when it occurs, then there's calm, and the calmness is called the honeymoon. In this honeymoon stage, what victims don't realize, what I didn't realize, in this honeymoon stage, where the abuser says they're sorry, where they say they're going for counseling. Some of them say they go to church.
Okay.
Some of them say they are born again. Some of them say they are totally changed.
Yes.
They buy flowers. They take you for another honeymoon. They give you big gifts, maybe a brand new car, maybe a house. That stage is actually part and parcel of control. The abuser knows once they're able to control you at that time, they're able to call what we say maintain control. So if you understand at the heart of abuse is power and control, then you'll understand how abusers first they gain control by seducing you, being nice to you, you are their girlfriend, they gain control. Then they maintain control. Then after maintaining control, once they lose it, for example, the most dangerous time for a woman to leave the abuse is the 2 years after they've left the abuser. That is why last month you heard that there was a murder in Ongatarungai when a husband went and knifed his ex-wife. She'd already left. She went and found a place in Ongatarungai, but he still followed her and murdered her. Because within the 2 years, the abuser is losing control. If you understand the control issue, then he's losing control and he wants to regain it. So the ultimate of control is kill her. That's the ultimate.
Yeah.
Or if it's a woman abusing a man, is kill him. That's the ultimate of control. Wow. So it's very important to understand that the dynamics of domestic abuse is power and control, and we're talking about imbalance of power.
Okay, let's take a look at WhatsApp as well. More of your feedback coming through. Morning, Buvi. I am a domestic violence victim. My father, who was an influential public figure, was brute at home. His behavior traumatized us, driving me to being a cocoonic introvert, a situation I am still fighting at 55 years. It's a very painful process, but the best remedy is when you learn to be your own psychologist. Mbuvi, we had nowhere to run to. Njugi Waweru, wow. Njugi, I'm so sorry for that. Billy Wanyama, you're saying, I think for me the principle is simple. It's easier being proactive than having to deal with the results that come out of making a poor decision. I think everyone should assess each other's negotiables and non-negotiables, because I believe everyone can learn and change. That's if he is willing to, so that principle is key. All right, Billy Wanyama, thank you very much. We also have Hello K24. Got married in 2018. After a few months, my wife started threatening to kill herself. We separated later in 2019 and got back together in 2020 around August. Because we had a child, but things haven't been the same because I fell out of love. And I feel like I am in a relationship with a handbrake. There is no growth in my place. She refused to go to work. I don't know what to do. I have tried to talk to her, but it's all in vain. Here? He or she who does not stand up to abuse or stays in will at one time themselves be an abuser in one way or another. Nothing healthy can come from accepting or being too weak to stop it. All right. Thank you very much for your feedback. That person who said at 55, he's a man and he's still reeling from the effects of his abusive father, you know, from God knows how long ago. These are some of the effects that we see, long-term effects, because someone never put a stop to that abuse. Yeah?
Exactly. The problem of domestic violence is intergenerational, because domestic violence happens to many women, as I said before, and many women are mothers. And what has happened then is that the generation that came out of an abusive environment either does not abuse and stays away from relationships, or they become themselves abusers. 60% of boys who witness abuse in their homes are likely to become abusers.
Okay.
So this person has said their father was an influential figure. I want to say that all abusers, no exception, are charming in public, they're likable, and people see them as good people.
Angels.
Nice people. That is another problem to victims, because how do you convince the public who sees this person as an excellent figure, as a good person, as a church person, as a clergy member, how do you convince them that this person is abusing you? So this gentleman, I feel for him because he's 55 and he's still
suffering
from domestic violence. That is why in my organization we're preaching prevention. Prevention means tackling domestic violence at the population level so that we stop first-time victimization and first-time perpetration, and telling society, let's talk about this. Silence no more. Let's end this.
There's someone asking if narcissism is, a form of emotional abuse.
Yes, it is. I'll just straight away say yes, it is, because abusers have a narcissistic tendency, and some of them are outright narcissistic. Remember that I said about the misuse of power.
Yes.
And coercive power, and that the abuser wants good for himself at the expense of the victim. Look at this. You're baking a cake. Let's use an example, a simple example of a cake. A cake has ingredients: sugar, flour, a little bit of salt, eggs, milk. In an abuser's behavior, the perpetrator of violence also has ingredients in their behavior.
Okay.
Entitlement, disrespect for women, and also a sense of degrading someone all the time. So these ingredients make up this behavior, and this behavior is what, remember, is being used to control another. And let me also give an example of causes.
Yeah.
The causes of domestic violence, the root causes of domestic violence in Kenya, our thinking is shaped in where we came from.
Okay.
So let's look where we came from. We came from a cultural background where men had the first place, then children, especially sons, then women at the bottom of the rank. When the man went for the hunt, for the kill, that's our culture.
Yeah.
Everyone else first, then the woman last. Even the children ate before the mother, and sometimes the woman will just be given entrails. So that centuries of our thinking has shaped both men and women. The socialization of women, not just men, of women, that is their place. Of course, we're beginning to break that with the new activism that is going, especially the so-called feminists who started the movement in 80s.
Right.
I'm a born-again Christian.
Yes.
I'm a faith person, but I'm telling you, I'm thankful for the work of feminists because I have built my work on their platform.
Okay.
I was made aware of this problem by them. So I ended up in it. I experienced it. But the people who are telling society, let's do something about it, are those so-called feminists.
There's someone who said there in our WhatsApp that, the wife has become something else, and he feels like he's in a handbrake relationship where the wife doesn't go to work and she feels entitled on this and this and that. Basically, this gentleman feels as though he's in this by himself. He's alone in this. Maybe we can talk about his situation and the fact that men are also experiencing emotional abuse in ways that they themselves don't even know. A lot of men will say, bibi yangu ni kichwa ngumu, bibi yangu she's just lazy, bibi yangu is just this and this and that. And unfortunately, they actually do not know that this is abuse to them.
Yes, it's very interesting you brought up that. Many victims, both sexes, men and women, do not know that they're going through abuse. Even when it is physical, like a slap, that's physical, right?
Right.
Someone has hit you. I've had women, an MD, a top corporate woman, saying she's not being abused by a man who habitually slaps her.
Yeah.
But she doesn't see it as an abuse. Yes, it's true that men go through abuse. They go through emotional abuse. Because if you look at what is happening in our country, there's a case of Dan Matakaya. He was burnt by a woman. We're not saying that there are no women who are abusing men. We're just saying that there are more women who are having that abuse. Let me repeat that again. So yes, there's emotional abuse in the lives of women. So for this gentleman, he's talking about the
wife.
The wife. So maybe what I can say about this, let's go into the types of emotional abuse.
Okay.
So types of emotional abuse is yelling,
Yelling.
Yelling or shouting.
Okay.
Yelling is American. Shouting at you and swearing. Constantly rejecting your thoughts, your opinions. They don't matter. Also, put downs and isolation. There's also the part of fear, and fear is the greatest tool that abusers use, because fear is used as a mechanism of violence to control you. For example, let me give you an example. A victim has gone through physical violence.
Yes.
And again, we say that when all forms of violence have happened repeatedly, over and over again, that is called battering. So this woman has gone, my example, Mrs. X, she's gone through physical abuse. And she's been taken to Nairobi Hospital. She's rich. That's where the rich go when they experience abuse.
Yes.
The poor, us, we don't know where we go. And she goes to the hospital. She has terrible, terrible injuries. She's taken to ICU. She comes out of it, and her family tells her, no, don't go back to him, but she has not made a decision. Let me emphasize, as long as the victim has not made a decision to leave, it's a waste of time trying to make her to leave.
Okay.
They must reach a point of empowerment that they want to leave.
Okay.
So she leaves, goes back to her husband. So this is how fear is used. The controller, next time, he does not need to beat her. All he needs is to say, where? And she remembers. All he needs to say, give her a look, and she remembers. So constantly, the victim is checking herself. She's walking on eggshells. You got it.
Yeah.
And this mechanism of fear, even when there's a calm period, there's also a sense of violence. And I'm sure that I'm thinking this is what the 50-year-old gentleman was talking about. Those calm periods are still filled with fear when victims and their children, if their children, anticipate violence.
Okay.
So you're constantly on check. You're constantly on your tiptoes.
Because you remember what happened last time.
Because you remember what happened last time.
Let's take a look at another WhatsApp message from the listener. Remember, we are talking about emotional abuse. We're almost coming to the end of the conversation, but this is what you're saying on WhatsApp. With all due respect, if we reduce domestic violence into a gender issue, we have lost the way. Feminism is a platform hijacked by some women to mislead the society. The panelists should read Who Stole Feminism, or that's a book written by a woman called Christina, this is Hoff Sommers, or the lady is called Christina Hoff Sommers. Okay, thank you for your message. Shiko from Embu. My dad has been violent since I was young until now. Every time he is drunk, no one sleeps at home. I am married and I feel like I have carried forward the trauma to my marriage. Today as we speak, my mom is living since dad told her he will kill Kim rather. Okay. This is, I mean, if you look at that text rather, this is a lady who is literally speaking on behalf of her mother, and they're saying that they have lived through violence their entire life. Is it possible for people to live through violence their entire life?
Yes,
surely.
Yes, it is.
Not being able to leave?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Victims feel trapped in their situations because there is no much support for them out there. This is the decade we are saying that there's beginning to be help for victims. And give me a moment to answer the woman who talked about feminism.
Sure.
Feminism is a movement that started in the United States of America and spread in the West. But in the 1980s, it branched into two. It branched into two where there's the liberal side of feminism, those ones to throw their bra away, and there is the right side of the feminism, which is conservative and based on Christian principles. I have been called a Bible feminist, and I've answered it to it because I said Deborah, the judge in the Bible, was a feminist. So when I talk about feminism, I know exactly what I'm talking about because I worked for 4 years in domestic violence shelter in the United States, and all those things came into play in my training, where I have a certificate from the largest training organization in the whole of USA.
Okay. All right. So clearly you're speaking from a point of knowledge. As we end, we have about 2 minutes. Let's talk about solutions. You are in an abusive relationship. Very few have been lucky enough to get out, such as yourself. Others have died in their situation. Others have, come out, with disability, maimed, without their eyes, and so on and so forth. Others have come completely mentally destroyed psychologically, being locked up in Madari because, things happened and they are irreversible. How can someone get out of an abusive relationship, especially of the emotional kind?
Yes, and I guess Paul will call me back, maybe, so that we can talk about the impact of emotional abuse on victims. Women, again, I'm talking about women and children. Right now, my heart is really crying out for children because we have put so much focus on women, we are losing focus on what is happening to children.
Okay.
So maybe that will be another show. But yes, you can get help. You can get help. Get help, please. There is help out there. Maybe you can just say the number that you can call in Kenya. A toll-free number is 1195.
1195, yeah.
They'll give you help. Another thing is be safe. Don't call when your perpetrator is there.
Around.
Make sure you're safe. Don't call with your cell phone. They will see it on your cell phone. Go to the neighbors. Use the neighbor's cell phone. Just don't do things that keep you in danger. Again, maybe another show we can talk about safety planning.
Okay.
Then the number one thing I've said, get help. Number two is consider going somewhere safe. When we talk about going somewhere safe, we are not talking about ending marriages. When we are talking about going somewhere safe, it's because our organization believes in 5 core principles, which I cannot mention all, but the one I'm talking about is called safety first. We must preserve life. Sanctity of life must come number one. So when you're looking at assessing a situation, it's not only physical violence which kills, emotional abuse can kill. There are women who take their own lives. I have a friend whose sister agreed after being emotionally abused for 20 years, finally agreed to go and seek help. And the night that she arrived, she said she was not feeling well, and the next day she just collapsed and died. And the doctor said it was because of the years of emotional abuse.
Wow, stress killed her.
There is no difference between physical abuse and emotional abuse. The only difference is that emotional abuse, they're hidden scars. We can't see them, but it's just as bad. And finally, I can say that talk to someone who understands domestic violence. Quickly say that just because someone is in counseling does not mean that they understand domestic violence, because counseling is about treating trauma. So yes, they can treat the trauma that has resulted in your emotional abuse, but they may not understand the dynamics. They can't maybe define domestic violence. So do not go even to an expert who does not understand domestic violence.
Thank you very much, Esther. Rose Foundation, how can they reach you? Are you on social media?
Yes. On Facebook, it is Prevent Domestic Violence KE. On Twitter, it's @Foundation Rose. And our telephone number is 0724 617 472.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we come to the end of the conversation, but in case, as usual, like we say, you'd like to reach out to Rose and her foundation, you can always let us know, and we'll definitely put you in touch. K24 this morning comes to the end. On behalf of Shiko Kaitani and Jeff Mote, tunasema kwaheri, but K24 has more to offer. Alan is coming up next with the Daily Brief.